that's generic for all of his neighbors for that matter. But whether it is or not is besides the point. If he's unhappy now because he's envied so much and he can't enjoy what he has in his wealth, then he has two options. He has the option of becoming an utter lazy man or a moderate man, and those are the options that Solomon gives him. And Solomon is really wants him to have the matter of six. Moderation, don't go completely to that extreme. He's often talking about extremes here.
He does. There's Solomon again. Yeah, you're right about that. He's dealing with either end of the spectrum. That is the 49th Psalm, which is not far from the 42nd Psalm. They're closer to the 42nd than the second anyway. Beginning in verse 16, I'm just going to read this because it ties in with what we're talking about. You know, as Alman talks about the rich man who really has nothing there. And again, that's maybe a terrible paraphrase or a summation of what you're talking about. Verse 16, be thou not afraid when one is made rich, when the glory of his house is increased. For when he dieth, he shall carry nothing away. His glory shall not descend after him, though while he lived he blessed his soul. And men praise thee when thou doest well to thyself. He shall go to the generation of his fathers, they shall never see the light. Man that is in honor and understandeth not is like the beast that perish. So even that rich man there who ends up with everything, so far as we can see, at the end, there's still nothing there. Okay, let's look at some more verses from the Proverbs that deal more in this balance. The 15th, Proverbs 15, verses 16 and 17. Again, the moderation there that Alman is talking about. Better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and turmoil with the treasure. Better is the portion of vegetables where there is love than a fattened ox served with hatred. And the Proverbs 16, verse 8. Better is a little with righteousness than great income with injustice. So, again, I think those are good lessons for all of us. There. This is one of the things, and most of us in this class are older. I look around and I see a few that I consider very young. And these are things that we should learn as we grow older. That when you're young, your perspective is considerably different there than it is as you get older. When you reach a point in your life that you're able to look back and you say, why? You know, why did I think that was so important then? Well, it was important then. You just don't know why it was, then. And then you reach another, and you realize, well, there were things that were more important. I wish I had known that then. And somebody was telling you, because somebody was telling me when I was young, there are things you should be more focused on. But I had the benefit of pretty much knowing everything, at a young age. So, I didn't really heed a lot of advice that I should have changed with.
Godliness with contentment is great gain.
That's one of your favorite verses, isn't it, Jane? Godliness with contentment is great gain. And that is something. Again, contentment it's a learned virtue. Well, I don't think we're born with that. I think we learn it. I think we sometimes have to make ourselves learn it. There, particularly now. Now, Alman did this man in verse 4 that's envying his neighbor. He hadn't learned contentment yet, has he? Has not learned contentment. Then if it's a situation where the other neighbor becomes envious, they also have not learned contentment. you know, we're taught that we need to be content with what's necessary for us. Then we got a roof over our heads, we've got clothes to wear, we've got food for our bellies. Then if we're seeking the kingdom first, then there's our contentment. There's our contentment. Go ahead, Jane.
The secret,
I'm sorry?
the secret is putting God first in your life. You'll have contentment.
Yes, ma'am. And that's one of the best kept secrets in the world, isn't it? Jane said the secret was putting God first. Now, some of you could hear, but nobody at home can hear. But yes, it's a well kept secret. Yeah. Okay, there's hands all over the place here right now. Jordan?
I'll just say this, sometimes I get jealous of this little one right here because she doesn't have a care in the world.
Okay, for those that, now, Jordan's talking about her baby, you know, and feeling a little jealous because this baby doesn't have any cares in this world. Now go ahead with what you...
Well, it's just, and there's so many lessons because she has food, she has clothes, she has a bottle in her mouth, and she's eating.
Does she worry about it, Jordan? Well, you know, you said she does get loud when she gets hungry, but that's not from worry. You know, that's from letting you know that she wants to eat.
She just knows to rely on me, and in turn, she just knows to rely on God and not worry about things.
You know, and yes, I heard somebody say amen. I'll say it again. Ties back to Jane's comment of putting God first. And also, I think, Jordan, to our Lord's comment, you know, you remember when all the grown-ups were critical of the children for crowding around, you know, and what Jesus say to them? Unless you become as these little children, that you shall in no way enter the kingdom. And I think part of it, to Jordan's comment, is that her infant child over there is totally dependent there on her mama, on her daddy, and that baby's fine with that. You know, that baby's fine with it. When we learn to be fine with being dependent upon God, then hopefully there will be a bit better off. Go ahead, Alma. Oh, Sherry, then they're just hands. Go ahead, Sherry, then Alma.
Well, what you just said, you've learned. So depending on God is learned. It's not that you automatically know it. That baby doesn't know anything but her mother. at
That's
this
right.
point. And so as we grow, we learn. And I think that basically what we're looking at here is society dictates and grown-ups listen to what society says as far as what's successful. You know, and so we know better because we read the scriptures and we do put God first. And so that becomes the most important thing instead of trying to go out and chase the wind after everything that we'll never be able to hold on to, that we can't take with us when we die.
And that's it, yes. And, you know, and Solomon makes that point several times. Regardless of what you have, then even if it's gotten by legitimate, legal, ethical, godly means, this is as far as you're going with it. You know, you ain't going any farther. Dick, and then Almond, we're going to give you your chance. I know he's...
Well, I said once, I wish we had a timeline of Solomon's life as to when some of these things
Yes.
dawned on him, but we don't. This seems to be obvious. This was in older age that he came to this idea about contentment. Because earlier in his life, of course, he talked about oppression in the first few verses.
Yeah.
Solomon was an oppressor. He oppressed hundreds of thousands of people. They had to work for him. He had some sympathy for the oppressed, although he said neither one of them was comforted. But he doesn't seem to do anything to relieve their oppression.
And that's key right there.
He's indifferent about them, but he sees that they're oppressed and has some sympathy. But he didn't move a muscle to do anything about it. But his contentment is realized later in life because he multiplied riches, he multiplied wives, he multiplied horses, seemed to make him happy. And then he worried about what was gonna happen to all these things after he was
Yes.
gone. So he didn't learn contentment till late, and he realized maybe, he had waited too late.
Yeah, and we learned, or we've talked about his concerns being justified there because his heirs, 5 years. It took Rehoboam 5 years there to lose the kingdom. Go ahead now, Alman.
Well, I would just want to comment about this matter of, different times in a person's life, he changes his outlook or his purposes. When I retired, I was 65 years of age. And at college, I taught so many different courses. I taught some Bible courses too, and Bible interpretation. But I had to study for all these other courses too that I taught. So when I was 65, I decided I am just going to study the Bible. But I asked myself the question, are you going to study Hebrew better, more? And I wanted to really get Hebrew down, but I thought, well, man, I'm 65 already. I may be lucky to be 70, so I'm going to forego the study of Hebrew too in my Bible studies. But I've lived to be 88 years of age. Now, as I look back at it, I wish I had really also spent a lot of time studying Hebrew.
Are you going to start?
No, not now.
Okay. What if you live to be 108 now?
But then, whenever we moved, I was told I could only take a few bookcases with me. I had to get rid of most of my books, and I began to think, well, I won't be studying as deeply as before. But in these last 3 years since I've been here, I've been studying probably as deeply as I have ever in my life, but I didn't. I'm surprised that I've been able to do that.
Then, Miss Belva, did he have a lot of bookcases? Oh, I wish you could see her face.
A garage and a bedroom full.
A garage, a bedroom. I remember, David, I remember your grandfather's library there, Brother Puckett. And I guess part of that might have been your dad's, but I remember going to David's house in the garage. Just walls there lined with Brother Puckett's books, and so some of them old books. And I remember Dick there having such a huge library that he ruined his back moving it there. That was from Tuckerman, wasn't it? Where he was trying. And he said from then on, he just leave it. We would just leave it. All right. Other comments, questions before we move on? Okay. He goes on here there to change the thought a bit, where Solomon talks about the personal disillusionment that he saw. Let's look at verses 7 and 8. He writes, "And I looked again at vanity under the sun. There was a certain man without a dependent, having neither a son nor a brother, yet there was no end to all his labor. Indeed, his eyes were not satisfied with riches, and he never asked, and for whom am I laboring and depriving myself of pleasure? This too is vanity, and it is a grievous task." He notes here that, and pay close attention to this. This is from the book. Solomon noted that the success-driven person usually fails to find happiness. He does not say here that the successful person fails to find happiness. He's talking about what drives, what motivates a person. And if being successful is the only motivator they have, then they're going to fail to find happiness or contentment with that. And he gives reasons there for this in these verses. The first thing, because he or she there never slows down. Look in verse 8 where it's underlined. Yet there was no end to all his labor. Whenever this person got done with whatever they were doing, to their mind, to their thinking, there was nothing to do but start it over again, there to keep on going. Another reason, because he or she never has enough, says, indeed, his eyes were not satisfied. Now that is the Solomon Dick was describing a few minutes ago. That this man that had more than anybody in the known world, so much that even the Queen of Sheba there made note of it there and said that the word that had gotten to her was nowhere near there the actual truth as to what Solomon possessed. Another reason, because they never asked the crucial question, why? And for whom am I laboring and depriving myself of pleasure? They're so busy, they're so intent on being successful that they fail to enjoy life. That, you know, and I enjoy life more now than I did 40 years ago. I mean, just the fact, just enjoying life. I mean, I know there are others in here the same way, just because as you age, your perspective does change, and you understand, you know, that our lives are a gift from God, that were meant to be enjoyed, and there is much more to enjoyment than accumulating stuff. That's the word Sandra used in our first class, the stuff there that we all want, there that a lot of us have. I mean, we've all got stuff, you know, that means a lot, means something to us. We've probably all got some stuff that actually means nothing to us, but we're just not really sure what to do with it at this point. But this life that God has breathed into all of us is something that He intends for us to sit back, then to put Him first in our lives, Jane, and to enjoy. Dick?
Yeah, Solomon had a lot of stuff.
Yes.
I've seen the ruins of his stables at Megiddo, and boy, you can't imagine the number of horses he must have had. But he wasn't even content with that. He wasn't content with 999 wives or concubines either. He had to go 1,000. You say that just about everything that he pursued, all of it ended up being vanity and striving after wind.
What was that word you used earlier, Almond? Moderation? There's a Solomon. You know, I mean, you know, forget the chariots, forget the horses, forget the forced labor. Just those 1,000 wives and concubines that demonstrates that mindset. And I hear people a lot, I hear brethren a lot say, well, these were just political arrangements that Solomon had made. No, some of them I'm sure probably were. But the book of Kings tells us Solomon loved his wives, then to the extent that he let them turn him away from God and to idol worship. Any other hands? Am I missing somebody?
This just makes me think of that old Alabama song, I'm in a hurry to get things done. Oh, I rush until life's no fun. All I really gotta do is live and die, but I'm in a hurry and don't know why.
Yes. And again, sometimes it does all of us good just to sit back, say, you know, why am I doing this? Yeah. Who else? Almond?
It seems to me, again, Solomon now has gone to another extreme with another extreme case. I don't know that he's extreme, but he's giving us an extreme. In verse 4, he said this, again, I consider it all travail and every right word, that for this a man is envied of his neighbor. That farmer or that person was, he was doing right. He obviously feared God and he had accepted God's gift, and so, but he was envied, and that's temptation to go wrong. Okay, so he's doing right. This guy isn't doing right at all. He stands in complete opposite from the guy of verse 4.
When he says that this is vanity, that this is a grievous task and Alman, I know nothing about Hebrew except what little bit that I can read about what other people know about it. And what I read about this phrase, this grievous task, this is not talking about a one and done thing. This is talking about a lifestyle there that this man is living, a grievous task there, a life that will not bring happiness. Scott?
Just hearing all this, I asked the question, why do we look down upon those who are enjoying what they have?
I don't know. You make sure I heard you. Why do we look down on those who are enjoying what they have? I don't know because I don't do that. So I don't know why other people do it. What do you think? Jealousy, envy?
I think that's part of it. I think part of it is just an internal happiness. They don't want to see anybody else happy.
And if I'm going to be miserable, you are too. That kind of attitude.
What kind of looking down on other people that are enjoying this other you talking about?
There was a line from a TV show I heard that says, you know, it's not sinful to go look down upon those people who are shopping in Beverly Hills. You know, to think bad about them. Because they're spending money that they could be giving to somebody else.
Well, I'm starting so we can get political really easy right there. We won't.
You know, instead of buying a new car, why don't you go buy a junker and send the rest of the money down to somebody else that needs one?
And that's a wrong attitude, I think. Yeah, I really do. So somebody worked for that. They're entitled. They're entitled to enjoy the fruit of their labor. Ecclesiastes teaches us that they're entitled. Now, we talked.
People don't learn that lesson. They feel guilty about going and spending money.
Well, yeah. Again, I can't relate to it. There, you know, maybe some in here can. You know, I don't know. I just can't because to me it doesn't matter. You know what you do, what Jim does, what John. I don't care. You know, I just purely don't care. Now, I grant you, there are plenty of folks around in the world. You're right that it bothers them. David, did you have your hand?
I just remember a story my dad used to tell. A man, a strong Christian, when he first started preaching, and that he would talk to him because he felt so guilty because you know, it was so easy for him to make money. And he made lots of money, gave away lots of money, but he just felt the guilty when he sees so many people struggling in that. He was just very entrepreneurial minded. His businesses were super successful, and just the ability to make money so easy, he felt so guilty about that. Even though he was doing the right things with it, the right attitudes. And this, I remember Dad saying, you know, that you got to think of it from a different way, that you have that ability. Look at all the people you employ. Look at all the people you help. When
Yes.
there's needs, you fill those in. You know, we need everybody, and you shouldn't feel guilty about what you have.
And no, and you're right. But part of that point being that you know, a poor man generally employs very few people. You know, it takes a successful man to employ somebody else. Now, a few weeks ago, I remembered you had your hand up, John. I won't forget you. You'll probably have the last 10 seconds. A few weeks ago, we talked about this from New Testament teaching, that part of the reason that we work is to help others who can't help themselves. Now, that's not what we're dealing with here. I don't believe. I think we all understand that our God-given obligation to help others in it. What we're talking about, that doesn't mean we use everything we have, you know, that we don't. What Scott was getting at was the people then are able to actually enjoy life, and people become envious of those folks. Go ahead, John.
Well, Scott, I was just thinking, you know, like with Judas, he made that comment because he was a thief. But for myself, I think there was a time in my life where it was ignorance, and I'd have to go back and find it. But I saw a guy, he bought a new Corvette, and he was taking criticism. Do you know how much good you could have done? He went through and listed the good that he did by buying the Corvette, the people that make the rubber for the tires, the people that make the wiring, the people that make the paint, how many people were employed in making this vehicle that he bought. And, you know, I wouldn't even thought of that. I was ignorant of that.
It wouldn't have occurred to me if it would.
I just want to tell two real short stories. When I went to Florida College at first, I met a guy who had gone there. He'd been well, I won't even say what he was. But one problem he had was something like this. We will we'll borrow millions of dollars for a church building. And if the air conditioner goes out, we'll borrow millions of dollars for an air conditioner. But if a guy comes by wanting to go to some strange land to preach the gospel, we don't have any money for him and wouldn't think about borrowing money to support preaching the gospel, but the building. The other story is this. There was one student at Florida College. I think he was recently converted, and he went there, but he wasn't a very good student. And so, and what happened, at this time, the Soviet Union had collapsed, and they were glad to have students come and teach English or anything, you know, because they were trying to become like the West. He had an expensive car. He stopped going to college. He sold his car. He went over there, and all he could teach was English to these students. But he even converted a PhD who would translate for him, and here he is, a very learned person.
So the PhD he converted, I'm assuming, was an atheist prior to conversion?
I don't know what she was, but she well may have been. From officially, she probably was.
Officially, yes. Okay. All right. We will start there with this then next Lord's Day, Lord willing. And you know, just consider this there through the week. The happiest people are not necessarily the most prosperous. Okay. Appreciate the comments, questions.